cancel it. Um, so just obviously we're in the middle of COVID here. Glad everybody is healthy. Hope all your employees, family members stay that way. We have been extremely busy in communicating with the membership in relation to COVID, in relation to what's going on with the PPP. Okay, thank you. I'll continue. So on the homepage, we have a COVID area right in the center of the area, and there's a whole host of resources for you and your companies in respect to what's going on with the regulations. We have our human resource benefit company, SESCO, that has been providing us with a lot of incredible information in relation to handle all of the HR implications and everything else. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. There's a whole host of information on there, and obviously we'll keep everybody up to date on that site in respect to what's going on with COVID and things that may impact you. We also have a weekly call every Wednesday that you're welcome to participate in, which goes through some of the best practice and all of our members sharing what's going on in their market. So COVID has been sort of front and center. I will tell you that our conformity assessment section has been meeting continuously on a monthly basis. They would have normally met at the P2 meeting. So very engaged there. We're still doing, Don Hammond is still our participant at SEPA, which used to be Smart Grid. We continue with our standards updates, and again, Don Hammond deals with that. We're hopeful that our annual meeting will take place in October in Long Beach, California, October 12th through 15th. We've actually just opened registration, so our hope is that the markets will open up again here and that we should be able to continue with that meeting live and in person in California. So you should start getting more information in regarding that. But other than that, obviously, I just want to say, Don, thank you to you. Thank you to you and everybody here for continuing with ACES and for all your leadership. We are very, very open here to closer engagement with the ACES group. We're happy to help with some of the administration and everything that goes with it. Just really wanted you to know that we really want to have a closer relationship with the CAS section and ACES and make sure that we communicate back and forth, and that we have an open door here for any new ideas, anything that you need help with from a collaboration standpoint. Really anything that you guys need, we'd be happy to look at here. And again, we're happy to support this initiative. And if you guys ever have any questions in relation to what's going on at ACIL or with our foundation, ILI, please feel free to reach out to me. You can get hold of me from the website. And again, we're just appreciative of you folks continuing to meet and for us to being a part of it. So Don, thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate all the help, but you've brought along too over the last year, helping me out and kind of getting ideas and that kind of stuff. For those of you that don't know, Richard Bright, myself, and then Bob Altwater, we kind of meet, I don't know, probably once or twice every month or so, just to kind of get these programs kind of set up for the future meetings and that kind of stuff. And we haven't really talked a whole lot over the last couple months because of the situation which we're faced with. But thank you, Richard. I appreciate all the help you guys bring along too. So it's extremely helpful.
Thank you, and have a great meeting. I'm going to jump off, as I said I was going to, but have a great meeting. If there's anything you need after this, please don't hesitate. Thank you all. And stay safe and healthy, everybody.
Thanks, Rich. Appreciate it. All right. Next on the list is, and I know OSHA is very excited about this part of it, but the OSHA update, kind of going back to our directive back in October. I figured I'd give you guys the floor and some time to perhaps answer any questions based on where we left off back in October, as much as you can relate to all the group here, I guess. And then if there are any other NRTLs that want to ask specific questions to OSHA, I will give you guys the floor right now. Kevin,
okay,
take it away.
I'm going to start off, Kevin Robinson, the Director of the Office of Technical Programs, Coordination Activities. Part of that responsibility is to oversee the NRTL program. However, for the past month, I have actually moved up into my supervisor's position. I've been acting deputy director for the Directorate of Technical Support and Emergency Management. Tom Hannigan and Charles Higgins have been acting in my role since March 16th, and that will continue at least officially until the end of May. That is when I'm supposed to go back to my role overseeing the NRTL program. However, I suspect that might actually go a little bit longer. I've been pulled into OSHA's COVID response activities quite significantly, so I've been kind of living that for the past 6 weeks or so. But Tom and Charles have been managing the overall NRTL program. I'm very happy to report that we do have a new engineer on staff, Keith Greenway. He comes to us from an NRTL. He's been with us since the beginning of March. So he came on board, joined us for a week, and then OSHA went on full telework, where we've been for the past month or so. Since our last meeting, we have been working on drafting several policy memos to provide some guidance on some issues that are coming out, or several issues with respect to the new directive, clarifying some topics that we discussed at the October ACES meeting, and more specifically the OSHA informational meeting following the ACES meeting in October. Some of those documents are still in the works. They're still going through clearance. They were just about ready to go out when OSHA got hit with, or when the COVID response kicked into full gear. And we've also published a Federal Register notice on OSHA's proposed plan to eliminate the SNAP program. That Federal Register notice published February 2nd. It was open for comment. The comment period closed March 11th. We did receive several comments, and we're in the process of going through those comments and, as necessary, making changes to the plan. So the final Federal Register notice is in the process of being developed, and will be published as soon as that is done. We are also in the process. We've had some formal inquiries from NRTLs to ask us how to deal with factory surveillance inspections while everyone is in a stay-at-home orders throughout most of the United States, and there's travel restrictions internationally. There is a policy memo that is probably going to be published. Have a small hope it might be published this week, but it will probably end up being officially published early next week. So some formal guidance there will be coming out. We have provided some guidance with respect to the directive for normal factory inspections, but this policy memo is going to provide some guidance on initial factory surveillance inspections while we are under a stay-at-home orders and travel restrictions. We have been, as is to be expected, a lot of our NRTL on-site audits have been postponed. Tom, do you want to speak a little bit about what's going to be happening going forward, or what our plan is potentially for the rest of the year?
Sure, no problem. So this is Tom Hannigan with OSHA's NRTL program. And we haven't been able to travel since February, obviously, and we've canceled a bunch of audits, a lot of them in Asia and Europe have all been canceled, and right now we're in the process of scheduling web audits. We're in the process right now of contacting, else and getting those set up. And if you are an NRTL, you can expect and haven't been contacted yet, we will be getting to all of them. So, and we're doing it on a rolling basis. There is still some hope we may be able to travel in August or September of this year. So we're scheduling some now for, May, June, July, but as time goes on and, if travel restrictions still stand, we'll keep doing that. But yeah, that's kind of where we are right now. We're in the initial stages of proposing web audits, seeing what capabilities NRTL have, and making sure that we structure all of our web audits the same way. So we're being fair to all the NRTLs. But yeah, I think that's where we are as far as audits go. And if there are any other questions about that, feel free to ask when we get there.
Yeah, I think that about does it, at least as far as updates from OSHA. But certainly, if there are any questions, I assume there probably will be. We're happy to try and answer any ones that we can.
All right, I'll open the floor to any questions for OSHA.
What are the salient features? This is Prashant from ACES here. What are salient features you're implementing in the remote web audits? Can you go over that a bit, please?
The web audits with respect to auditing the NRTLs?
Yes. What are the highlighters you're looking at?
We are generally auditing against the new NRTL program directive, trying to do some gap analysis with respect to how the NRTLs are offering or are implementing the new NRTL directive, at least to the extent possible. Initially, when we published the directive, we did so with a 1 year time frame where NRTLs would need to come fully into compliance with the new directive, and we would be conducting audits against that directive, noting any deficiencies, either as findings if they were items that were deficient under the old directive, or as observations, things that would need to be addressed before the October 1, 2020 deadline. With respect to web audits, obviously we are looking at training, internal audits. We'll be looking at some of the conducting audits of the technical files, just as we typically do under any on-site audit. Looking at calibration of certain pieces of equipment, trying to cover as much as possible during web audits that we can, as we normally would during an on-site assessment. So obviously the only thing that we really can't do during a web audit is taking a tour of the laboratory facilities, looking around at active test setups that may be going on in the laboratory. But we are as well understanding that the NRTLs or many of them are in limited operations or stay-at-home orders themselves. Laboratory may actually be closed, and we're working with them to address what capabilities they actually have access to remotely, considering many of our points of contact are still working from home.
Yeah, again, Prashant here. If some labs are open, are you asking them to do mock? Are you asking them to are you witnessing through your FaceTime or video conferencing? Are you doing anything of that? Just ask.
As far as OSHA audits of the NRTLs, no. And we typically don't do that when we're on site. The only time that we typically ask for uh, witnessing of tests is typically when an NRTL is asking for a new standard to be added to their scope, if we happen to be on site, or there's a complex test, or something that is very different from other standards that are in their scope. We may ask them to witness a test or um, walk us through the process of how they would conduct the test if it's something that's rather complex to set up. But as a normal course, we typically do not do witnessing of tests, at least as much as other accreditation organizations.
Another question here. Where can I go and find the list of all NRTL labs, approved labs?
Sure. So the easiest way to do it is if you go to OSHA.gov, and they keep changing our website, so let me make sure I can get there. Go to OSHA.gov. Up at the top, there's an A to Z index. Click on N as in Nancy, and about 1/3 of actually right smack dab in the middle of the N is nationally recognized testing laboratories, and that'll bring you to the NRTL homepage. And there's you can find a list of all the current NRTLs, the recognized sites that they operate, as well as the NRTL program directive that talks about how we operate the program, conduct our audits, etc.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Kevin. It's Tom Daly at UL. I know
Yes.
you mentioned you're already auditing against the new directive as observations. Has there been any discussion about pushing back the implementation date of actually logging violations as such due to COVID?
There's been no formal requests to OSHA to consider that. There was one NRTL who reached out to us, and they indicated that they needed an additional 3 months to address one specific issue, and that has been the only formal request to push back implementation date of the directive. But it is certainly something that we are keeping an eye on. Obviously, at some point, things will be with some of the actions that the various governors, at least in the United States, are taking. And as time goes on, we get a little more clarity as far as what the true impact is going to be. We will start making some decisions on that. But there's been no formal discussions nor any formal requests from anyone to push back the implementation date of the directive.
Okay. If we wanted to submit a formal request, how would we go about doing that?
Probably the best way is to write a letter to OSHA. You can email that to nrtlprogram@dol.gov. That is something that everyone on the NRTL program staff has access to. We check that fairly regularly, and considering we've got numerous people in various acting positions, at least temporarily, that's probably the best place to send things in.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Kevin, this is John O'Donnell with your. Oh.
Yes.
This is John O'Donnell with Eurofins. There was a lot of discussion about the revised marking requirements in the new directive. Is there any thought on a policy memo or information about that coming? I know there was quite a bit of discussion about it at the last.
Yes, there is a policy. There is a policy memo that is in the works on that. It, if I remember correctly, that is caught up with our solicitors, who are pretty much full time into pushing out temporary enforcement and policy guidance with respect to COVID. So unfortunately, that is a victim of that. It is in the
Okay.
work. There is something coming out on that, and it's essentially as
Okay.
we discussed during the October meeting. So we're not trying to kill anyone with that. So.
Okay. All right. That sounds great. Thanks. Thanks,
All
Jim.
Any other questions for OSHA? Oh, Kevin, I think this is a first. You're going to get off the hot seat in 15 minutes. That's
Nice.
yeah. Maybe we should do this more often for you. I don't know. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Kevin, thank you so much, and Charles and Thomas, I appreciate it. Hey Joel, if you're on, I know there was some questions that you had received from the IEE or IEEE regarding OSHA and the COVID-19, the NRTL processes. I didn't know if that was something that you wanted to discuss right now. I think it's probably a good time to maybe bring that up.
Certainly, yeah. This is Joel Sleece. We what I've been seeing, and this is just is my role being the chair of ANSY's accreditation committee and being the secretary of both the U.S. National Committees for the ICEE and ICX. There seems to be a lot of information going around regarding factory inspections and how those are going to be handled, especially during this time of the pandemic where travel restrictions are in place. The other is that the factory locations, for the most part, don't want to have visitors come in during this time. They want to keep it as secure as they can. And so we saw a lot of messaging going around, seemed to be pretty conflicting. But this week, I think we got a pretty good guidance or overview that was provided by Sean Paulson. I know he's on the line from CSA, and hopefully he can kind of take us through that, what is happening on the ICEE side, or on the IC conformity assessment side regarding the use of video witnessing. Don, is that something you can talk to?
Yeah, sure. For NSF, we have created some policies for that, for auditing current clients. So that's about the extent that I know that NSF has done. I know QA has done some other stuff, or working on some other stuff too, so that I don't know about right now. I know that was some stuff that was pushed through. If Sean wants to speak more in depth, I'm more than happy to give him the floor if he can. What he was on.
There we go. Looks like he got off mute.
I think he's definitely not on mute.
Yeah, I had my phone on mute. That was the problem.
Oh, there you go. Okay, hey Sean, thanks.
Yeah, so actually, the IECEE has actually issued out a couple of circulars to address certain situations during, extenuating circumstances of COVID-19, and one of them is regarding the factory or the customer test facilities and the use of remote auditing of those facilities. And then initially, in order to be able to use live stream video auditing of testing, you had to originally had an assessment done of the facility. So the NCB would have had to have done an initial on-site assessment to ensure that they had the capabilities. And again, as Joel mentioned, during what we're seeing now is many factories are not allowing people in, or they may be closed in some cases, as well as our own staff being able to travel. So under, again, these extenuating circumstances, the IECEE Executive Secretary has agreed to allow remote factory inspections and remote testing, I guess, or live stream video of the testing, even if the facility had not originally been assessed. to do that. But again, it's only under these extenuating circumstances. Once things calm down and we get somewhat back to normal, the intent is that we'll revert back to what the original requirements were. Is that what you're trying to cover, Joel?
It certainly was, Sean, and thank you for that. The other thing that was, a concern, I guess, for the manufacturers of electrical products was what was going on in China as well. And I know China had provided some guidance to its, I want to say to its assessors during this time that they would be postponing doing the assessments, and they would try to reschedule them at a later time if everything, if the situation would permit it. I'm wondering, have you heard of anything that's changed regarding China in doing follow-up factory inspections and assessments?
No, I haven't heard anything else. That's come out of the IECEE anyway.
Right. I was just wondering with their ties into the IECE that they may have at least shared that new policy with the organization.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen anything come through there yet.
Okay. Thank you, Sean.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Joel. Appreciate it.
Certainly not.
Let's see. Next here on the agenda is the cases update. Nancy, Hannah, are you actually on the call with us? Uh-oh. Get an email from her either. Hoping Nancy can make it on. I know that the cases meeting that was supposed to be in St. John's, Newfoundland this year has been postponed. So, fortunately, we won't be able to go out St. John's to have our look for updates from Tim Pope, how that's going to work out. I know they did send out a couple letters kind of addressing factory audits and that kind of stuff over the last week or so. The RTL should have already received that. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Don, maybe I can just mention about that is that CASES actually issued out a couple of notices regarding the field evaluation program for Canada. We have two documents. One is SP 1000, which covers basically electrical type equipment, and then we have an SP 3000, which is for the electromedical type equipment. And they've given some temporary relaxations on certainly on quantities, because they do have a defined quantity that's allowed to be covered under the SI program or the Special Inspection Program. And again, noting that under the circumstances, some field evaluation bodies are getting requests for large amounts of SI to be done or special inspections. So they're addressing that part of it, and then also allowing the temporary use of remote SI special inspection under certain circumstances. And again, the intent there is that we could basically witness some of the testing being done, the evaluation of the product remotely. And once, again, the situation is resolved or lifted here somewhat, then the special inspection body would have to go back to the site and actually do a full evaluation and then label, field label the product. We are not allowed to ship labels over, or to the customers under no circumstances. So again, it still requires a follow-up in the end.
So Sean, this is Bob Pollock. As I understand it, what CASES actually did was explain what all the provincial authorities would accept. Since CASES itself has no regulatory authority, they're just saying this is what all the regulators agreed to make it simpler for the industry. Is that right?
That's right. That's correct, Bob.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate that. Let's see. Real quick, while we have some time, I wanted to kind of address the float chamber discussion we had last time and kind of where it's at. I'm still waiting on the NSF 50 group to work their way through their technical committee on that and get us a definition so we can take that to the standard technical panels. When I reached out to them about a month ago before we were isolated to our basements, they had mentioned they'll have a clear definition and an actual written proposal for that for float chambers, hopefully by the first part of the summer. So that might get pushed back now, obviously, with everything that's going on. So look for another update with that coming up in October, when hopefully we can meet up again there in Virginia. So I just wanted to get it on that. Dave Shapiro, was there another question you had said that kind of came through? I think you're on mute there, bud. I don't have you. I can't hear you yet. Nope. I can see you, but I can't hear you. Nope. I don't have. I still can't hear you yet, bud. All right. Let me know. We can get you back in here in just a second. Okay. With that being said, Jennifer Stratton, are you on the call today?
Donna, I think we asked her to get on at 11 o'clock, so it's probably still a little early for her.
Oh, wow. Okay. Perfect. All right. You're right. We did say 11 o'clock. We kind of blown through this real quick. A little quicker than I thought we were going to. Okay, no problem. Is there any new business or any unfinished business that anyone needs to discuss with the group?
Just one item, Don.
Yeah, go ahead, Sean. Yep.
On the topic that you had bulleted for concerns raised about the NRTL process during COVID-19, I think that's what Joel was talking about. Is that open for a couple more questions, or?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. And maybe this is more of a question to Kevin and Charles and Tom, but looking at the evaluation side of it, we have a list. I guess there's some discussion about essential products that may be that we may be able to cover under a remote initial factory evaluation or inspection. And I'm wondering if there will actually be a list of those essential products that would be developed.
We are not going to limit the types of products that are going to be covered under any sort of special remote factory surveillance.
Okay. So the other one too is on the again on the initial the IFE process and where we have duplicate scopes, I guess, with other accreditation bodies. Can a remote factory evaluation actually be considered, and would it be I think you have issues with it under the NRTL program, and I don't know if there's anything coming out that's going to maybe clarify that. I think maybe you mentioned that earlier, but
yeah. So the policy is written, or basically what we are doing is we are going to be publishing. As I said, maybe by the end of this week, but probably more likely early next week, a temporary enforcement policy that will be suspended at some point after things return to normal as a result of COVID. I don't want to get too specific because things can still change. Generally they don't, but things can still change. But it will, I'm going to say very broadly as it's currently written, it will allow the NRTLs to resume all normal functions remotely, conducting factory surveillance remotely, um, with some additional administrative functions that they need to do, and some criteria that are put into place once things return to normal. And I'm going to leave it at that for now, I think.
Okay, thanks, Kevin.
Yep.
So that'll cover the end products as well as the components, will it? Or
Components are not covered under the NRTL program. So there's no restriction there, at least from OSHA's perspective. But yeah, it'll apply to all products under the NRTL program.
Okay, thanks. That's all I had. Thank you.
There's a question here from Dave Shapiro, and I'll leave it open to anyone that wants to answer it. He's concerned about the possibility that factories not set up to manufacture PPE, for example, might be putting out safety products that fall short, parallel to the CDC. Initially had some essentially the CDC had initially had some unreliable coronavirus tests. Can anyone speak to that question? No? Okay. Yeah, okay.
I can't. Well, I can say very broadly. I am aware that the federal government is, as a whole, is looking into a variety of things like that. I have seen several of those conversations that are going on. But the FDA, CDC, NIOSH, OSHA, and I'm sure several other organizations are monitoring that. And it's a situation. If you are deep into monitoring what's going on with the government, you'll see a lot of them coming out with some temporary enforcement and policies and making exceptions and doing what they can to ease things. But as far as accuracy, as far as the different PPE, whether or not it fully meets the standards, those are situations that I know are being discussed in the federal government, but there's no great answer for that, unfortunately.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Right. Amy Phelps, do you have anything to bring up with NIST currently? Put you on the hot seat. He's on mute, so.
Hello?
Hey, there she is. Hey, Amy, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Not too bad. Is there anything you wanted to update the group with with NIST?
Yeah, sure. The only one.
Oh, I think we lost you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you now. Yep.
Okay. Recently, NIST put out a notice of proposed rulemaking on their on our Code of Federal Regulation 15 CFR Part 287, which is guidance on conformity to federal agencies on conformity assessment. And this is in conjunction with the recent updates or revisions made to OMB A119 circular. And that notice of proposed rulemaking, the comment period closed at the beginning of February, and we are in the process of going through comments and looking through. Well, actually, no, I don't. I'm sorry, I'm losing track of time, but the comment period closed recently, and we are going through the comments, and we are making some edits and stuff based on those and reaching out to stakeholders to discuss any comments and so forth, and an updated CFR will be issued or published in the Federal Register later this year. That's really it.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks. And threw you on the hot seat there real quick, but I saw you were on there, so I thought I'd
Oh, no worries at all.
throw it out there.
Also, usually I know FDA is typically on the call as well, and NIST is still engaged with them on their accreditation scheme for conformity assessment, their pilot program. One of the theories that impacts this group, especially within the scope of accreditation in that pilot program, is around the 60601 series. So more information will be available regarding that. They did have a draft guidance that was available for public to review and provide comments to, and those comments have been received and deliberated on and responded to. So again, just watch the FDA site, and more information coming out soon.
Excellent. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate that. Spur of the moment
Yeah,
there, but thank you.
are there any questions or anything that anyone has?
Sure.
Prashant here from IAS. What do you think are the significant changes that will come up in the register?
The significant changes with regard to which? The CFR or the pilot program from FDA?
With regard to CFR?
I wouldn't call them significant changes. I mean, we had some comments. They weren't really big ticket comments or anything like that. But just in general, off the top of my head and not really prepared to discuss all the comments that we received, some of the common themes that we're starting to see is NIST's role with regard to our authority as granted in the National Technology Transfer and Advancement Act, the NTTAA, how certain aspects of what we updated in the CFR, which we put in the NPRM, impacted or align with A119. A lot of comments on the coordination of conformity assessment with state and local governments, not just federal agencies. The role of the Interagency Council for Standards Policy, the ICSP that NIST chairs, that's a government agency that looks at conformity assessment with the standards executives and the standards executive rules around those. Those were like three main big ticket items. Does that answer your question? Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions?
Hey, Amy, it's Dan Cannon from ACIL. I thought I'd just take the opportunity, because I know there's a lot of ACIL members that are in ACES. We do have a very recently scheduled session with Amy coming up on May 13th to discuss at least ACIL comments that were submitted to Amy and any other stakeholders that are ACIL members. We'll have an invitation to that going out next couple of days. I just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And during that call, presentation, I plan to kind of go through all of the common themes that we received, kind of looking at where we're kind of heading, what direction we're going in terms of changes, and direct a lot of that stuff specific towards the comments that we received from ACIL and then our next steps.
Excellent. Thanks, Amy. Is there any other questions for NIST or Amy? All right, perfect. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem.
All right. Okay, with that being said, I think our next presenter is supposed to be here, as we mentioned, around 11. So I think we've been going for about an hour. If anyone needs a break or anything like that, refill on coffee, have another donut, if you can get one. we can't get any here in Michigan. So feel free to. We'll take about a 10-minute break or so, and we'll get back on here in about 10 minutes. Thank you.
Let's see.
Well, the good news is, David, I can see you. I think I can hear you. It sounds like you have a phone there. I think I hear you typing.
So, Don? Hey, Don, this is Joel.
Hey, Joe, what's going on?
Yeah, I was going to say that I've gotten an email back from Jennifer. She's going to try calling into the meeting.
Okay, perfect.
Told her we should be
I'm
taking
here.
it back.
I'm
Oh,
here.
you're here.
Hey.
Yay! Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
So we have everyone on break, I think, until about 10:30. We got just a couple minutes before we get started again, I think.
Yeah, about 5 minutes. 5 minutes or so.
Okay.
Joel, I wanted to ask you something about something you said in your email to me, and it had to do with the fact you mentioned that the Mexico law was published for notice for making it for comment. Have you seen that available for comment?
It is not. In fact, we had a meeting yesterday with Gustavo, and he said it's available, but is not out for public comment.
Right. It's published, but it's not published for comment. It's published, and we were able to comment on it as the U.S. government, but I wanted to make that clear before we start talking about it.
Right. I don't think any of the folks on this
Because you
call
might
would
have
know.
known something I didn't. Okay. You might have known something that I didn't know, and that would have been a great. I mean, we've been asking them to do that, of course, but they haven't been amenable to that.
That would be a blue moon if I ever got in front of you, Jennifer.
Hey Jennifer, this is Don. I'm the chair for the ACES group, and first off, I appreciate you joining us for this. And secondly, did you have a presentation that you wanted to share at all, or anything
No,
like that?
I'm just going to speak from the heart on this one.
Hmm.
Because
Even
we've been,
better.
so heavily involved in this.
Okay, great. No, that's perfect. Totally fine. We'll give everyone here, like I say, another 5 minutes or so, and then I'll throw you on the hot seat. So.
Okay, great.
Yep. Thanks.
Well, I have been going through the what they have published on the law. There is a lot of things in there, Jennifer, that are very scary on how it's actually going to work out. I can imagine your comments were rather lengthy.
They were, I believe they were 7 pages.
Yeah. Is there any hope that anything will actually change in the Senate?
Hard to say. Hard to say. A lot of this has to do with different dynamics, and we can get into that on the call. But I know that Economia has passed our comments back to DGN. I know that there were domestic comments that were very similar to ours.
Okay.
So I hope that will do some good.
Fine.
And I can talk about that. And ANSI also submitted almost the same exact comment that we did.
Oh, okay.
So we tried to leverage every possible area.
Right. I don't think NAM ever gets involved with this, the National Association of Manufacturers.
They have not, as far as I know, but I'm talking to Ryan later today, so I can ask him about this.
Okay.
Ryan Ong from NAM. I have a call with him at 3:30.
It's
There's nothing preventing any organization from writing DGN to talk about what they don't like about that measure. And right now the Senate's on a break until the 30th.
Oh, really? So we actually have some time.
Yes. I mean, there's nothing stopping NEMA or any other organization from writing DGN and saying this is what we think is a problem. Even though it's in the Senate, I mean, DGN has to implement, and so you could make them aware of your interests.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. That is very good to know.
All right, we'll give everyone here about another minute, and then Is anyone on the call excited about real sports tonight? We finally get for the first time in 6 weeks, we'll have a live sporting event with the NFL draft. I know I'm, as a sports fan, drowning over here. So, my goodness.
We'll take what we can get.
You're not kidding. Oh my gosh.
My son got to play one game as
Oh,
a JV baseball player on his team before they canceled the season.
that's so terrible. Oh my goodness.
They're all heartbroken, especially the seniors.
Yeah, that's tough. It's been tough here too. Yeah.
Honestly, hopefully they still get their letter for their jacket.
Correct. Yep. Oh.
I know for the seniors, they're already talking about not having graduation ceremonies for them.
Yeah.
It's like grading, for the most part, is about stopped. So whatever you were at, that is what's going to go forward for you.
Yeah, that's here in Michigan, same kind of deal. They've canceled school indefinitely. And my son, who's 5, was supposed to start kindergarten in the fall, but kindergarten registration's on hold now because they don't know when the kids are coming back. So, excuse me, I don't know what that's going to do for them next year. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So who knows? But yeah, it's unfortunate for the seniors, kind of what they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think let me check the roster here. I think everybody is here, so or at least virtually. So that's good. So here's the last portion here of the ACES meeting that we had set up, and this is a proposed Mexico quality infrastructure system, and Jennifer Stratum is joining us, and thanks to Joel for setting this up. Jennifer, welcome to the ACES group here. I appreciate you stepping forward and doing this for us. If you can kind of give us a background of yourself, and then kind of the background to this proposal, and then I'll let you speak from the heart from that point. So the floor is all yours.
Sure, and thank you. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Jennifer Stratman, and I work on technical barriers to trade for the United States government in the U.S. Trade Representative's office. And I work, my roles are working in the WTO TBT committee as the lead delegate for the United States, and also I was the lead negotiator for the USMCA Technical Barriers to Trade chapter. And Joel asked me to come on and talk about a recent measure developed by Mexico, their national quality law. And that law will replace the law on standardization and metrology in Mexico. It will also do another important thing. It will also implement Mexico's WTO TBT requirements and also USMCA TBT requirements. And we knew from the beginning that Mexico would need to update its law in order to meet the obligations it has assumed under that chapter of the new free trade agreement. So the United States has been working on this, and you might say, well, why do I care about some national quality law? How does it affect me? It doesn't seem to have to do anything with my sector, but really it is something that's fundamental to every sector of business that the United States will do with Mexico. Anything that has to do with the trade in goods, it will affect. It will affect the technical requirements and also the conformity assessment procedures for any good entering Mexico. The United States government has been working with Mexico on this law since the end of November. We were able to preview the law as the free trade agreement partner. And it's a very long law. It's over almost 100 pages. And we had to have it translated. And obviously there were many questions about the draft that we had before we could even develop comments. There were some translation things happening that we didn't quite understand. And there's a lot to get through with respect to reviewing the law. We did have our best experts from the U.S. government review the law, and especially from NIST, also from Department of Commerce and from USTR. And, we know that the draft was published, and then the Senate went out because of COVID. So they're now on a recess until April 30th. So what we were able to do is we were able to provide a U.S. government comment to the measure that Economia passed to the Senate and also to DGN, which is the national standards body of Mexico. So we're hoping that some of our comments will be taken into account. But as I said, the law covers everything from what standards Mexico will use, how they'll develop technical regulations and standards, what conformity assessment procedures they'll use, and how accreditation of laboratories will work in Mexico. And this will not only cover the aspects for the technical barriers to trade agreement, but also SPS, sanitary and phytosanitary measures. So we do have some concerns about the law. There were a lot of changes. They are not going to, I think it surprised me when we knew they were going to update their law in order to meet the obligations of the agreement. I think we thought they would just update the base law that they already had. The fact that they were scrapping that law and coming up with something completely new was troubling because we actually thought the old law was very good in a lot of ways, and they really only needed a few updates. And then we also were concerned because, right from the beginning, we heard that the Germans were there in Mexico giving a lot of assistance to all of the bodies, the accreditation body, the DGN, and others to develop the basis of this law. And as you know, you probably know, our system is very different than the EU and how we, especially with respect to a laboratory accreditation and acceptance of things like MRAs. So those were concerning factors for us when we were going into it. At the beginning of the year, Renee Hansher and Renee covers good regulatory practices for USTR. We did have a chance to go down in early February before restrictions were put on to Mexico City and talk with everybody in the system. So we talked with all of the conformity assessment bodies that would meet with us, the accreditation bodies, Economia, DGN, to let them know we did have some concerns about the measure. I think that in part the measure does leave the door open for the use of international standards, but it doesn't concretely say how it's going to do that. With respect to conformity assessment, I think there's a lot of concern that first of all, there's a part of the measure that talks about the fact that every good and every technical regulation will have an associated conformity assessment procedure. So if there's a mandatory requirement for your product, it's going to have a mandatory cap. And that's a big concern for us because, products have different levels of risk. And we see a variety of tools available, from the United States perspective that would be beneficial for Mexico to employ, not just third-party certification. We would like to see them use some suppliers' declaration of conformity assessment where appropriate. We would like to see them use post-market surveillance where appropriate. And those things are mentioned in the back of the law, but there's no indication of how those will be used. The rule on accreditation, it's concerning on several levels. One, it's unclear how really foreign accreditation bodies will be on equal footing with Mexican accreditation bodies. And then also some of the requirements to give confidential information over to the Mexican authorities would be also something that's troubling to accreditation bodies in the United States. And it does seem to implement the ILAC cross-frontier policy. And if you're not familiar with that, it's a policy that basically says if you're an accreditation body working in another country and you get some business, you basically have to inform the national body that you have this business, and if they're willing or interested in helping you or even doing the business, that you have to work it out with them. And so that's also something that, U.S. interests don't like. So there's a lot involved in the law that we're trying to work through with Mexico. I think the implementation of the agreement is upon us, and we're trying to leverage as much as we can in order to try to get Mexico to change. But just given that we're in this time of strange pandemic and not everybody's open, it's really difficult to say how our comments are going to be taken into account before the implementation of the agreement. So that's everything I know about the law and what we've been doing on it. We did consult with the ITAC 14. They did provide valuable comments, and we also consulted with ANSI. So, I'm happy to take any questions about the measure or anything else that you'd want to talk about at this time.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, the floor is open for any questions. Any questions for Jennifer? Going once.
Well, Don, let me jump in there and hopefully we'll get this started.
Yeah.
One thing I guess for the folks on the line to understand, this is very different on how we normally do things regarding metrology, conformity assessment, standardization, and enforcement, and doing field surveillance, who's responsible for what. And Jennifer also mentioned the issue about data and the need for privacy and some of that information that gets passed along from certification body to accreditation body back to the government, and the roles and responsibilities of each of the players in each of those roles. This is very different. So be sure to not bring along the baggage that you have on what we do here in thinking about this new law in Mexico. Jennifer, what I saw, and I guess it leaves the question open regarding conformity assessment. Will brick and mortar conformity assessment bodies in the United States be able to be recognized in Mexico? I didn't see anything about a conformity assessment mark, whether they're still going to be specifying the use of NOM markings on products that conform to mandatory standards in Mexico.
So I believe there will still be a NOM certification mark. My understanding is that for every NOM, there will be a certification requirement for that certification mark. So that's, something that's going to be quite extensive. I think for as much of a surprise as it might be for some industrial good manufacturers, it's also happening on the food side as well. So, they're even more surprised by it than you might be. And, again, a lot of the law is written very loosely, so there could be implementing measures that would improve the situation. But, our concerns are that there will be, in the USMCA, we have agreed to national treatment of conformity assessment bodies and accreditation bodies. So according to the agreement, there should be no difference if your product is tested in the United States than if it's tested in Mexico. The rules are in place for that. So if you are using ISO 17020, ISO IEC 17025 laboratory, that should be just fine. Whether it's in Chicago or it's in Mexico City, it shouldn't matter.
Right.
And so Mexico has to adapt its rules in order to really have that acceptance. And so I'm not sure that that's fully in place in the new measure. What they've done, and this is something that I haven't had really a confirmation on, I've asked them, I've said, is it going to be a requirement that you have to have an equivalence agreement or an MRA in order to have the national treatment? And my feeling is the answer to that is going to be yes. And that's really not what was intended in the agreement. The agreement was to have national treatment based on accreditation, laboratory accreditation. And so, you know, we're going to have to battle some of that. I will mention that there are some entities in Mexico that are also concerned about this, and you know, we've been trying to work with them, some lobbying firms and some associations within Mexico that also have the same concern, and we've been trying to work with them as well. The other issue that I've heard from CABS is that DGN will somehow have to approve MRAs between CABs. So if UL and ONSE have an agreement, for example, that DGN will have to approve that agreement. And I've heard concerns from all of those kinds of parties that that's something that's never happened before. And how would DGN do that, and why would they have that authority? So that's not something that we think about much in trade, but you know, it was something that several different people brought up to me in the consultation.
Yeah, because what I was surprised is that the standards developer, if they develop a mandatory standard, then they would be the ones to do the conformity assessment if they had the conformity assessment body to do the work, or they would appoint the certification bodies, or I guess I should say that any other certification body that wanted to do the work, they'd have to go to get approval from the standards developer that had done the standard and had it become a mandatory. And then there's the whole issue of transparency on having to provide your price list on what it's going to cost to do the conformity assessment, and issuance of fines if the certification body isn't doing the testing in compliance with the standard, how those fines were going to get assessed, and what actually happens with the fine after it's been assessed. It seems like it puts the standards body in a very difficult position to be the go-between between the DGN and a certification body that may have violated the rules. And I didn't see if there was actually an appeal mechanism in there. It does get into very different things than what we're normally accustomed to seeing. And so I could see what's going on with having to have an MRA, because you almost become quasi-governmental with this new structure in place for the standard.
I would agree that the new structure is very, I mean, while Mexico claims to have private entities, those private entities are very hooked into the government. And it's almost like they're more like it reminds me of more like a crown corporation model, right? Like Mexico or like Canada has, where, organizations say they're private, but they still really have to respond to all of the government demands of what is required of them. And they also have heavy influence into the government operations. So, yeah, I mean, those are things that are, I think will continue to evolve in our comments to Mexico when the restrictions lift. We are planning on talking to them about this during the TBT committee, which is just going to be a virtual meeting. Not a virtual meeting, that's even the wrong thing to say, but we're going to have an exchange of papers during the committee meeting on specific trade concerns. Now, because this is an overall implementing law, it's not a technical regulation or a cap. We talk about it in a different way in TBT committee under implementation of the agreement 15.2. So we will try to have a conversation with them about that again, and we're also going to try to work with some of the other trading partners because, not only would it violate USMCA in a lot of ways, but also the TPP or the CTPPP, whatever they call it now. And so we're going to try to work with some of those folks to try to see what they know about the law, and also if they've submitted comments and what the story is on their end.
So if I can just follow up, is an English version going to be, is that something that's being circulated that we could share with the ACES members?
So I have an English version. That's a U.S. government version that I could share, but just please know that it's a close hold and that it's just the English translation from the U.S. government. It's not an official translation. I have a translation.
You were saying that just how many pages it was. It's very,
I think it's
like
79 pages.
It's almost like you walk into for me, it was the first time I had to look at the European notice. This notice is very difficult to get through just because of the way it's structured and formatting. It didn't have any of that in there. So you have to basically read through it all and then come back and see how it's that we're trying to structure the document. So that makes it pretty difficult to go through. And I can imagine it made doing the translation difficult to do.
It was extraordinarily difficult because if you've read it all through the document in Spanish, you'll know that there was a lot of preface to the books. There's a book on standards, a book on NOMS. There's a book on metrology, and how you actually read through everything, and how the front of the book or the front of the law language pertains to the back of the law language. You have to keep cross-referencing back
and forth.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably about 4 or 5 people who've really read through it within the U.S. government, and there's probably 2 or 3 advisors who really took the time to read through it. Because of course, all of this came out while COVID hit, and some people just couldn't look at it because they're so bogged down with, because their business relates to either medical devices or PPE.
And Jennifer, this whole discussion about a directory, sound like there's going to be one central directory for all listings for all the different industry sectors? It'll all be combined into one?
Yeah, there's going to be some kind of platform, and we've asked a lot of questions about this platform and how it's been funded, and part of me thinks the Germans gave it to them. I don't know. Or the World Bank or the UNIDO, something like that. We asked a lot of questions about how that platform would work, and because actually the information in Diario Oficial has been very good and very consistent. And so we're very hesitant for something else to exist because it's a one-stop shop to go there for, at least for SPS TBT information. Mexico is a very good notifier. They give 60-day comment periods. They have procedures in place that, make their system very reliable. Even sometimes, I would say even more reliable than the United States, in terms of like the regulatory procedures. But then if they take everything out from the federal metrology law, that really weakens it. And we really haven't had the time to go through the law on the old law and exactly compare it to the new law. We haven't done that. And so I think that's something we'd like to do, but it's just a massive project.
Yes. Don, should we open up the rest of the members, see if they have any comments?
Absolutely, yeah. If there's any comments or questions for Jennifer, please go right ahead.
So I would be happy to share the translation if you promise that you keep it close hold. I don't care if you're the people on the, I don't know how many people are on this call, but it's not something you can post on your websites or anything else like that.
Okay, I do have one question here from Jordan Acton. He wrote it up here for me, so I'll read it off for you. Jordan says, currently it is very difficult for certification bodies located in Mexico, accredited by ABs, other than EMA, to receive approval to certify products in Mexico. A very lengthy MRA process is required. Does the new measure appear to ease this at all?
No. No, and we're so disappointed in that. And we've been working to fight against that. And our comments reflect that. And we don't see that as being compliant with USMCA to have a MRA for everything. And it's the way the language kind of comes out, it's like it's active saying like the authorities will be negotiating MRAs above and beyond what's required in ILAC and IAF. And so, we had a lot of questions on that. Like, how is that even going to be useful for you? And, MRAs are only used in certain areas in the United States, and equivalence is only used in a couple areas. So how are you going to really make that good for everything? It's a big question in our minds about how that's going to work.
Yeah, it almost. Sorry, go ahead, Joel.
No, I was just saying that Jennifer mentioned that the problem they're going to, I think, face if this was to get through, how they're going to go to implementation, especially with all what's happened with the administration that's currently in place, cutting back on wages and salaries. It seemed like it was going to be difficult for them to muster up the manpower to actually bring this to fruition.
I think it's going to be difficult, and they keep telling us we have to act quickly. I mean, the amount of time that I had to do the turnover for translation and my first round of questions and our U.S. government comment was incredibly tight deadline. I mean, so much so it was really hard to make our requirements for the ITAC even work. It was that tight. So I think it's something we're going to continue to discuss with them, and as soon as they're kind of back online, we'll definitely be bringing it up with them. I think I've mentioned to Joel before about how it's important for organizations that have the ability to lobby within Mexico to do that, to talk about how it's going to, affect your business. And talk to the Senate about that, because it's not going to only be the U.S. government that's going to be able to make a change. I mean, it's going to take everything in our power to make this change if we want it to be better.
Well, it doesn't sound like there's any more questions. Jennifer, thank you so much for coming. Yes. You are a godsend, and all your folks that have been participating in this are really our heroes, and you've been doing just tremendous, unbelievable work. Again, the translation was horrendous to try and do it, given the length of the document, how it was structured, and then to sit down, try to digest it, and then put down your comments and concerns, because there were so many arrows to pull out of the quiver to shoot this thing down, and it seems like it has a lot of difficulty. Again, thank you so much for all the efforts that you do on behalf of not just electrical, but conformity assessment and accreditation. Really are a godsend. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Yep, thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate the time today. Excellent. Well, Joel, that's definitely interesting. I'm glad you were able to help me out and bring that to the forefront. Interesting what's going on down there in Mexico. So how it's going to move forward, or maybe not move forward. So thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate the help with that. Nancy Hanna is actually going to make the call here. She just emailed me that she's going to be able to jump on in just a few minutes for cases, so that's good news. So she'll be on in just a few minutes. One thing I want to go over while we have just a hot second here was the next meeting is scheduled, and Joel and I cleared it for October 22nd, which I think is the third week of October. So tentatively, October 22nd, that Thursday. Hopefully, we'll be able to all meet in Arlington again, like we normally do. Nice. And then I had an interest from a professor out of Stanford, mainly concerning 5G and the concerns. He's proclaiming that there's harmful radiation with the 5G, and I was going to bring it up to the group to see if our group would be interested in having the professor speak to us on that. And again, I don't know what NRTLs are or if there are any NRTLs certifying these systems or not. But I thought if the group's interested in something like that, I would allow him to present. If anyone has any comments or any about that, let me know. Schedule that if you guys are interested. Of course, we'll have to keep NDA violations and all that stuff. I understand that, but if anyone's interested in that, just let me know. I'd appreciate that. And with that, let's see. I don't think Nancy's on just yet. Nancy, are you on by chance? Give her just a minute, too. Does anyone have any problems with the October 22nd date? Because I was hoping that it didn't fall in place with any of the committee meetings. Because I know that's usually kind of a hot time for that, so I didn't know if that crossed over those or not. I was trying to get it the week before, but if anyone has any problems with that, let me know as soon as possible. And then, of course, for the next meeting, if anyone has anything that they want to bring up to the group, I always leave the floor open for our NRTLs to do something like that, or anybody that's with NIST or OSHA or NEMA, NECA, anybody at that point. I am also working on getting, and I'm working with ACES on this too, to allow some of the local electrical inspectors, like the IAEI, to join our meetings and kind of bridge a gap a little bit between, the installers and the inspectors fields to get into our group, be able to ask questions to the NRTLs or maybe even OSHA at that point moving forward. So, of course, as I was trying to set this all up, that's when the COVID stuff started to hit. So, as you know, emails usually get dumped into a bin, doesn't get answered. So we're still working on that to kind of some of those. And I don't think most of them will be able to come in person, but it'll be through the phone, which is totally fine. But another group to join us there. Yes, I don't see Nancy has joined us yet. Hopefully, jump on here quick. Hey, Joel, going back to Jennifer's presentation, I was just kind of thinking about it. Does it sound to you that it's going to be, if you're certifying a product that's going to Mexico, does it sound like you're either just going to have to conform with what they're putting together and just deal with it, and then that's just too bad? Because that's the way I kind of took her presentation.
Well, yes. Yeah. What she says, they threw out the metrology law. The way we've been operating since 1994, that all goes out the window.
Yeah.
And this, it's going to be very different, especially from a CB, what the relationships are going to be, what the services you provide, having to provide a price list now to the standard developer. They're going to be the ones that are going to give you access to this online directory where you have to put all the information. What you'll have to provide the standards body as well as the DGN is going to be, you basically have to provide whatever they ask for, when they ask for it. This whole issue about assessment of fines, I still don't know how that part is going to work. So the thought, I think, from Jennifer, I think she was really trying to kick us at is you need to look at this right away and raise your objections. And if you have any footprint in Mexico, to make sure that you're being heard either with the DGN, the Director of General Normas with standards, or in the Senate with Mexico. Because if this gets through the way it is and gets passed, it will really upturn the apple cart the way we've been operating in Mexico.
Yeah, my concern is, I mean, NSF Electrical, we don't really do a whole lot. We don't do anything with Mexico, actually. But our food program does, and so does our dietary supplement program. So I'm wondering, obviously, that's going to affect them.
Right.
And with supplements, as you know, that's a big problem, and with food, because there are certain restrictions the United States has with food. And so I'm gonna reach out to our food and diet sub folks and see if there's anything that I'm sure they know about it, and kind of see what their opinions are on it, because it definitely impacts.
They may not know anything about it because the law actually got started before the current president that's in office, and ended up dying because of the change in the administration. And then it sort of disappeared for a while, and then it came back completely revised. A whole new law was being proposed, and this is coming from the new head of the DGN, who is an attorney, and really. This has always been the concern with Mexico. With every administration that comes in, you get all new people in, and before anyone has a chance to work with them and educate them on their particular industry sector, this time they ran with what they thought is the way things should happen. So it's a bit disconcerting. It doesn't sound like we have a lot of time to try and affect the change. I think she was saying at the end of the month, the 30th, is before the Senate gets in. And again, it is a very lengthy document, and it is a difficult read to get through it to begin with. The translation, if we're able to get that, will be great. That everyone could actually go through it and get a better understanding of what they intend to do. But again, we're talking on the trade side, and what Jennifer stresses that you have to have a close hold of the document if she does share it with us. You can't run out with it. You can't post it on your website. You can't forward it on to other folks. It really is a tight hold. I'm not sure that she'll be able to actually share that with us.
Okay. Yeah, I will definitely reach out to our food and diet sub folks, because I know they're going to be definitely impacted. Yep, go ahead.
I was just, this is Dan Cannon from ACIL. I was just curious. I know there's a couple of ABs, or there may be ABs on the call right now. Have any accreditation bodies, U.S.-based accreditation bodies, have had a chance to absorb any of this? And they have any take on it? I know we've been kind of talking about it from a perspective, but I'm curious what the accreditation bodies think with regard to these new requirements and how they're going to be able to operate under.
Does any of our ABs, can you guys comment or anything like that on that?
Can I have the question again?
Yeah, I was just talking about that with the New Mexico laws. We've been talking about it mostly from a certification body perspective, but it affects the accreditation bodies too. And if it is indeed modeled, with some influence with from the EU, the accreditation bodies are typically used to dealing with some of that. Does it present any hardship at the AB level? You guys had a chance to absorb it yet?
I'm a technical staff. I have to run it through and discuss the management on this and let you know on this, number one. And number two, we have to see once the law, once this comes in effect, then we are, as ABs, I think they have to make the decision together what the stand is going to be, because in US it's we got a few ABs here, so yeah, I think the ABs needs to discuss with each other and come to a common standpoint how we're going to address this issue. That's my comment here.
Yeah, from another AB's perspective, this is Jordan Acton from A2LA. And I know that we hopefully Jennifer can get us this translation. I don't know who else said that they think it may not happen, but I would agree with that. So far, from what we've gotten, is pretty much nothing, and they've been super confidential about it. So we don't really know what it is yet. So until we get that translated document, I don't think we have a whole lot. We've talked to Jennifer some, but we haven't gotten much more than what was said today in this meeting.
Hmm. Interesting, because they're gonna, like Joel said, I mean, they're gonna put a due date on this of the 30th, and it doesn't sound like any of our ABs have any information on it. And I found it interesting too that she mentioned that the Germans were helping them. I don't know.
It is when you
There's
read through
something
it.
there's something with that. With a conspiracy theorist like myself. So, yeah. So
I think
I thought that was a little strange.
right. So hopefully she'll be able to get that out to us. It really is the way that the U.S. handles trade policy. They keep it a very tight hold. They do have committees that include industry sector representatives, but they all have to sign confidentiality agreements not to divulge what's being discussed. And the whole reason behind that is they don't want to affect the markets. If Wall Street heard about what was going on, what was being discussed, they could certainly affect the market and really cause probably more harm than good.
No, that's absolutely true. No question about that. Very, very interesting. Let's see here. Nancy, were you able to get through? Here on here. I take it everyone's good with the 22nd in October, so that's good news. I will reach out to the gentleman on the 5G thing to see if October works for him. Get that set up. Doesn't sound like anyone had anything either way on that, so that's good. Hopefully everything will be back to normal. Well, I say normal, somewhat normal in October. We can travel too. Great. So it would have been nice to get out of Michigan for a little while today because it's been freezing cold here. So over the last 2 weeks. So looks like you guys had nice weather down there yesterday. So it's based on the news. So it would have been nice to get out of here. But anyway, we'll give Nancy just a few more minutes. Hopefully she can make it on. If not, does anybody else have anything for the group before we close it down? Last minute comments, concerns? Uh-oh. No. Nancy, is that you? We'll join back on there. Nancy, are you with us? All right, folks. Well, thank you for adjusting your schedules and putting up with this kind of short meeting and just a quick update. I really do appreciate your time today. And not the way we normally do this meeting, but I just want to kind of get everyone together and really discussed more or less the NRTL stuff with OSHA. I know there was some kind of leftover work we had from the October meeting, so I wanted to make sure we had time to discuss that, and then kind of how the rest of the NRTLs are working with their processes during this COVID-19. Because I know there was a lot of questions kind of going back and forth, that kind of thing. So I really do appreciate you guys jumping on. I wish Cases could have been on, but I think Nancy got tied up today. So as I mentioned, Cases meeting in June has been canceled.
Don, she's there.
So oh, she's here. Excellent. Awesome. Nancy, welcome. I think she's here. Perhaps she's on mute.
She is muted.
She's muted.
I see her lips moving, though. Who can read lips?
Top there, I think there should be a little microphone. Yeah. I'm not good at that. You can just ask my wife that. So I don't see her on here at all.
Can you hear me now?
Hey,
Yeah.
There you are, Nancy. How are you?
Okay, great.
I gotcha.
We're all trying to get used to this technology. I haven't used this Blue Jeans before. We've been using Zoom here a lot.
Yeah. Blue Jeans for us at NSF is a vetted system, so it doesn't allow anybody to watch you in the background, kind of thing. So they've authorized us to use this, so that's what I get stuck with. But Nancy, I'll give you the floor for a cases update for us. I appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So from a cases update perspective, we have our regular annual meeting in June. We are looking into options now on how and if we're gonna have the meeting. So the in-person option is not there anymore. So we are looking into having it more of virtual type of meeting similar to yours. We have been dealing with some issues regarding COVID, so I'm not sure if I'm sure you're dealing with similar ones. From a cases perspective, there was some requests that came in for field evaluation agency to say, would you permit us, for example, to do remote type of evaluation of equipment that are essential to produce like masks or hand sanitizers or things that are related to the situation we're in. Like some companies are starting to import manufacturing type of equipment, so we can manufacture locally these essential type of things needed for the front lines medical staff. So we are providing some relaxation to how you're doing the inspection and permit these type of machines without full approval, with the condition that after the situation is completed, you go back and do a full-blown approval of the equipment and all the tests that are needed. So these are the type of issues we are dealing with. We have like the tents and temporary facilities that are being put up beside hospitals. So we are dealing with if there is any type of equipment approval and giving temporary type of permission to use equipment that don't have certification or full approval. Again, with the condition that the use of these equipment stop after the situation is done and until it gets full certification or full approval. There was a lot of other issues that were kind of put on the back burner given the situation. We are there were some issues that were put on the back burner. Like we've always been dealing with the issues of online sales and how we ensure the safety of these equipment that are sold online. There was still a working group looking into that, but it was kind of put on hold for a bit. Any questions?
And see how you guys are doing. I'm doing fine myself.
Sorry, I can barely hear you.
Up in the house, not by design, like I said, but by default. Few things that, of course, I'm absolutely focusing on, and I'm sure you are doing as well, as to stay healthy, make sure that people we care about, our family, our loved ones, our colleagues, as much as we can contribute, we keep them motivated and healthy. And I think that's priority one for me and for all of us.
Was that a question? I might not have heard it.
Sorry about that, Nancy. I don't know if we picked up someone's caller or something. I'm not sure. Any questions for Nancy and Cases?
Nancy, do you have any insight into what might happen with the Part 1 meetings?
As far as I know, it's moving ahead in a virtual setting. So they are changing the dates and times to spread it out a bit because you can't stay that long on a virtual meeting. So they are spreading it into like 4 days. They are trying to filter the subject that goes to the meeting to make sure it's ready, because the discussions might be a bit difficult. But it is moving ahead in a virtual type of meeting. And the same for the cases. This is what we're looking for as well, to move it to a virtual type of a setting.
Thank you.
So if you're considering attending as a guest or as a member, I would suggest you reach out to Tim Pope to ask about how the process will be with the different arrangements.
Perfect.
So may I ask, where are we in the agenda, Don?
We are at the very end.
Very end.
We had just kind of a short meeting this week or this time. Yeah. We had a quick update with OSHA earlier, and then we had a presentation with the Mexico Quality Infrastructure System. It was really good, and kind of went back and forth with the NRTL's processes with COVID-19 right now. So came in at a perfect time.
Okay.
So I appreciate that. So yeah, thank you so much. Any other questions for Nancy before we let her go? Good to go. All right, Nancy, thanks so much. I appreciate you jumping in here for us.
I was interested a bit to hear about like process concerns during the COVID, like the NRTL. If there's any notes that you can share with me after the meeting regarding that discussion, Don, I would
absolutely. Yeah, I'll send you the meeting notes, and then if you really want to listen or listen or watch the recording, I can send that to you as well. I did record this one, so be happy to send that to you.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for having me, and
anytime.
Stay safe, and bye for now.
You too.
Okay.
Yep, bye. Take care. All right, folks, that is going to adjourn the meeting for today. Thank you all again. I hope you all stay safe and healthy, and I appreciate your time today. So we'll see you, either some of you with the cases, hopefully we'll be able to do that, sounds like, and if I don't see you then, we'll see you in October. So I appreciate it. Thank you guys for your time today. Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello.